against popular belief that boundaries push people away, right? That's the myth, that's the fear. Actually, boundaries protect your relationship. Mm-hmm. So in saying, I feel like it is harmful to our friendship, we can agree to disagree. Yeah. I don't like what gets provoked in me. I think I become super judgmental, and that makes me feel bad when we're done talking. Totally. And I love you. And I don't want to have that interaction with you. So why don't we just agree? Can we agree? And we get the person to say that they'll, can we agree that this will be off the table? It's about transparency.
Yeah.
And managing expectations. Yeah. So we set everyone up to succeed.
That's right.
Instead of waiting until it becomes a shit show, because it can, and it will probably half the time. Something will happen where you made an assumption that the other person understood exactly what you were talking about. And you're like, we agreed to that. If it's not in writing, dude, you did not agree to it. If it is not clear and concise, you didn't. Even if it's just in an email, we're like, okay, this will serve as our whatever. Mm-hmm. And so part of it is we've got to grow up around our agreements. We've got to be able to set those limits, whether it's a business relationship or a friendship or whatever it is. And you can't do that unless you know yourself.
Hello, my friends. We are here with one of my favorite humans, someone who has been very influential in my life. You have known me. I think you knew me when I wasn't even sober. Is that possible, Terri?
It is. Yes.
Oh, wow. We've known each other for at least 16 years, if not longer, 17, 18 years. And you've always been someone who's been a friend, but also a mentor to me in many ways. And that's an interesting, that's always a fun dynamic when you have a girlfriend, but also that person that you have on speed dial that can support you when you're in crisis or when there's something difficult. And at a very difficult time in my life, when I remembered my trauma, you were really one of the key players in helping me get back to safety. And I will never, ever forget that. And I will say often I say to people, I know you're a therapist, but you're kind of like a therapist coach because of your style, like the vibe of how you treat people.
Right.
And you are one of the best. Just the way that you can land on what's going on with someone, the way that you can hone in, the way that you can help guide people back to safety is just so gorgeous. And I love you deeply. Mm-hmm. And you are now the author of Boundary Boss. Oh my God. Here we are. A topic that probably most every human in the world needs more than ever. And I'm going to dive in with you today on this topic and really dig into the meaty bits and the exciting messages that we need to take away so that we can create boundaries in our own life. And before we even begin, I just want to hear from you. Why boundaries? Why was this the book? You have so many topics you could have tackled for this big book. Why this?
I think, we talk about you teach what you most need to learn. And so I think that there was this theme throughout my young life, my teens and my 20s, of having a lot of painful scenarios because I didn't know what boundaries were. I didn't know the language of boundaries. I didn't know how to communicate. And to me, when I'm talking about boundaries, I'm talking about your preferences, your desires, your limits, and your deal breakers.
Okay.
Right. So it's knowing yourself and being able to communicate those things in your life. So I was much more of a people pleaser. I was much more of like a fix-it person. I was, over giving, over functioning.
Hi.
Hello.
Raising my hand. Yep.
And that's like everybody though, right? Because we were raised and praised, if you were raised as a woman, to be self-abandoning codependents. Right? Like we were, that is what people wanted us to do. Think about the messaging, right? Be a good girl, be a nice girl, turn that frown around. You want to be like, why? I'm sad. Why am I turning that frown around?
Right.
But we learned, right? So for me, it was a personal thing. Start a personal I got into therapy when I was 19, stopped drinking when I was 21. So I had a lot of years of my own therapy to finally get to like, what was this lack of skill set that I had that was creating so many conflicts and problems in my life. Then I left entertainment, right? I was in entertainment. I was an agent negotiating contracts for supermodels and celebrities for a long time before I just had my own awakening. Like, dude, there has to be something more meaningful I could be doing with my life. This literally cannot be my dharma. And no offense to entertainment, but it just wasn't my dharma. And I just realized by the end of that I was so much more interested in getting the models into eating disorder clinics or drug treatment clinics or therapy. I was so invested in their mental health, but not so much like the Pantene deal and the movie deal that I should have been psyched about, but kind of didn't care. And I was like, you need to switch careers. So I just really quit that business, kind of according to my father at the time. At the height of my career, why would I do that? He's like, because you want to be poor? I don't get it. Because I was literally leaving entertainment to become a psychotherapist in my early 30s. And yet I just was like, there's going to be no good time to be poor. So how about now is as good a time as any to just do something new. And once I made the shift, once I took that first class at NYU, I was like, oh, yeah, this is the thing I want to do. So then I start my practice and I see every person who came in through the door, whether they were, having difficulties at work, whether they were in a relationship that was causing problems, whether they had an eating disorder, whether they had a drug addiction, I could literally follow the dots backwards, that their pain all started from this place of not knowing anything about how to establish and enforce boundaries.
Yeah. Yep.
So I was like, it's an epidemic, like literally.
Oh, it is.
Nobody knows.
Yeah,
Nobody knows.
It is. And as it relates to creating boundaries, how much truth telling is involved? Because these days I'm very sort of like sloppily, is that a word? I don't know. Practicing radical honesty. I've just started reading the book on radical honesty and really getting into the practice for myself. But for me, it feels like one of the greatest forms of setting boundaries is just telling the truth. Can we speak a bit about how truth is a boundary creator?
It definitely is. And not being truthful is a boundary destroyer.
Totally.
So the subtitle of the book is The Essential Guide to Talk True, Be Seen, and Finally Live Free. But I want to be clear.
Great subtitle. Talk true, be seen, and finally be free. Fantastic subtitle, Terri.
Oh, thanks.
Carry on.
So let's talk about honesty, though, in the way of truth telling, according to me, because again, when we have disordered boundaries, you will have people who use truth as like a big stick to like beat you in the face with. Oh, hi, I like how you doing? Just can't be any bigger. Anyway, so the truth, when people say, oh, you know me, I'll always tell you the truth.
Yeah.
But a lot of times those people are saying, I hate your new haircut, or those pants make you look fat, or whatever. Like, we get really clear in the book, and I'm really clear that the only truth that we have a right and an obligation to tell is our own.
Yeah.
So it's important that we're staying on our own side of the street with truth telling. And there is a way to be honest and be kind. There is a way to say no and do it lovingly. There is a way to set a limit without like punching someone in the face. And I think that a lot of times the myths around being boundaried, having good boundaries, is that you have to be a bitch, that you have to be mean, that you're running around town like rejecting people and like getting into brawls. And the truth is that when you master anything, right, you do it with ease and grace. That's what becoming masterful is. So imagine that what I'm teaching in this book and what I've been teaching for years is learning this skill set, just like a language. You shouldn't know this. Nobody taught you this. Trust me. You didn't learn it at home. You didn't learn it in school. You didn't learn it in college. Even if you have an advanced degree, even me going to school at NYU to become a psychotherapist, I didn't learn it there. I learned it in the trenches with my clients and in my own therapeutic process, that there is a way to make this a methodology, a step-by-step process of slowly but surely learning how to be more truthful in our lives. Because, listen, when we say yes, when we really want to say no, under the guise of being nice, I don't want them to think I'm mean. I don't want them to think I'm a bitch. I don't want them to think I'm hysterical or I'm difficult. There's all of these myths that go along with asserting ourselves. What we're really doing, think about it. Saying yes when you want to say no. Is that shit nice?
No. When you are not telling the truth, you are definitely doing the other person a disservice, always.
And the relationship, because what we're doing is we're giving the people in our life who we love, a lot of times it's the closest people, we're giving them corrupted data about who we are, what our preferences are, what our desires are, what our limits are. And you don't have to justify this. Here's another thought about the whole thing with, I break it into preferences, desires, limits, and deal breakers, because I think there is a ton of confusion around what it means to have healthy boundaries.
Can you break those down for us?
Sure.
The preferences, yeah, I mean, that's like, let's get down, let's go.
Let's do it. With why I did it that way is because not all boundaries are created equal. Not all of them have the same importance in our life. It's still a boundary conversation. If you have a conversation with your person, that let's say your person likes to go to bed late and you like to go to bed early, and you say, hey, it's my preference that maybe twice a week we go to bed at the same time, right? That's my preference. I would like you to go to bed early with me twice a week so we can go to bed together, maybe fool around, whatever it is, wherever you want to do that. That's a preference. That doesn't, if your person is like, I really can't, babe, I'm not gonna be able to sleep. Like I love you. And maybe we just fool around in the afternoon, but I really can't go to bed at 9 just because you do. Like I can't. You can accept that. That's not you calling the divorce lawyer and being like, shit, that is a deal breaker. It's a preference. And so we treat a preference exactly like a preference, like something that it's nice to have, but if it isn't, like, we don't have to.
I hope you're enjoying this show. And if you want to get more Gabby, you can click the link below, subscribe to my Dear Gabby podcast on Apple, be the first to know when the episodes drop because they come out 1 week before the video. And you can download it to your phone, listen to it while you're driving, while you're cooking, while you're working out. You can just get more Gabby wherever you are. And if you feel called, leave a review. I'd love to hear from you. Now let's get back to this episode.
A desire is a little bit more intense, a little bit more yearning than a preference. So we share that in a different way. A limit is different than a deal breaker. You may have a limit like, I do not want you coming to bed late. My limit is that you're turning on the lights and you're waking me up. So I have a simple request that you don't do that.
Right.
I can accept that you don't go to bed with me, but I can't accept you waking me up because that's not cool.
Have you been in my bedroom at night?
Totally. I know you're going to bed at like 4 p.m.
I know you and I are texting at like 8:50 and I'm like, I got to go to bed.
Right.
Okay,
you're like, I'm sleeping now.
Yeah, exactly.
But then we move into the deal breakers. And these are boundaries that are incredibly important to know about yourself. And I find that women in particular are confused about what they're allowed to want, to not want, the limits that they can set. So your deal breakers, just like your preferences, your desires, and your limits, are super unique to you. But a deal breaker is something that is a non-negotiable for you in your life. And you don't need anyone's permission for this. It only has to make sense to you. When I was dating, I knew, because of my own addiction issues, my own recovery stuff, that I could never be with someone, even if they were in recovery. I could never be with someone who even had that in their life.
That would be a deal breaker for me too. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right? Like I can't worry about you relapsing when I can't worry about myself. Like,
right.
Some people even have said to me, well, isn't that, when I was dating, well, isn't that like limiting? And isn't that like you being like prejudiced against people who, I'm like, dude, it's a personal choice. It is my deal breaker.
Not a judgment. It's a protection mechanism in many ways. Yeah.
And I also don't need your fucking permission to have it. I don't, and I
Right.
don't need you to understand it.
Right.
It's
Can
my
you
choice.
help me
Mhm.
figure out what some deal breakers might be? Like, can we like workshop me for a
Sure.
second? Just because I think that's such a nice way for people to learn. And I'm
Yeah.
also very selfishly wanting my free coaching from Terri right now. So, okay. So a preference that I might have, great example. I go to bed at 9, Zach goes to bed at midnight. Can we meet in the middle? Great preference. Okay. A desire, what would be the difference? This is one thing I was missing. What's the difference between how you ask for a preference versus how you ask for a desire?
Well, a desire, you might ask for them in the same way, similar way, but a
Yeah.
desire might be like where you want to live.
Okay.
So it's a bigger
Bigger ask.
decision.
Bigger ask. Okay.
Yes. But
Okay.
you might ask it in the way of, hey, I'd like to make a simple request that we start a dialogue about potentially moving somewhere else because I'm
Got it.
feeling this way. Let's just say that we can put it on the calendar to discuss.
Okay. Okay. I'm trying to think of a desire I might have at the moment. Okay. Have to come back to that one.
Mhm.
And then a limit. This is where I want to know, like, what's the difference between my limits and my non-negotiables? I can get hardcore at times.
You
um,
can.
well, like a limit would be I like a non-negotiable for me is if somebody lies to me in business, it's over. Like go back,
Yep.
done. Like if you lie, it's done.
Yep.
A limit could be, whatever that one, like two strikes you're out kind of scenario could be. I don't know that exactly what that is.
Well, let's look at it. I have another idea. Like a limit for me is if I'm talking to someone and they look down to look at their phone while I'm talking,
Mm.
I'll wait a sec. Cause listen, some of my friends have kids. Like I don't know what you're doing. I'm not assuming you're playing Candy Crush or whatever the hell
Mhm.
people do on their
Mhm.
phones, but I will also wait. And I say, hey, I can wait. If that's important, I can wait until you're done. People who don't know me well will say, oh no, I can listen. And I'm like, oh no, that's my limit. I need you to listen with your ears
Oh,
and your
beautiful.
eyes,
Good for
right?
you,
Your
Terri.
eyes, right? And your ears.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful. That's great. And it wasn't just shaming or blaming. It's just like, this is my limit is what I could do.
Right. And I'm also
Very
not
good.
making a negative assumption about what they're doing. I get clear though. If someone is scrolling Instagram, I am definitely like, but you're fucking kidding me right now, right? Like, because I could be doing 8,000 other
Mhm.
things.
Mhm.
I will, if I'm with you, I'm with you.
Yeah. It's interesting. I had a conversation with a girlfriend, a mutual friend of ours, Elisa Hallerman. I called her yesterday because she's like a sober sister and she's very well versed in personal growth. She's a doctorate. We go to
Mhm.
each other for help, all of us. And I said to Ellie, I said, I'm having this trouble with a friend. We had a big falling out about some of our COVID beliefs, which is, I think, a thing that's happening a lot right now. Right.
Yeah.
And we just have very polarized beliefs, but they're also very triggering because for me, they're rooted in a global issue. They're rooted in this, we have to all be in this together mentality.
Yeah.
And of course, other people have very different belief systems. And I launched in with she asked for me to express my feelings, and I launched in with my radical honesty. And when I was done, I felt uncomfortable because I was like, there was judgment. Of course, there was judgment. I'm super judgmental of this situation. And that judgment has caused me to feel rage and anger and frustration
Yeah.
and sadness. And so I called Ellie and I said, well, what do I do here? Cause like, I really do I'm glad I told the truth, but I don't know what to do. And she said, oh, well, you have to create a boundary. And I said, okay, well, tell me, what do you mean? She's like, if you're going to maintain this friendship, which you are, because it's a close friendship, you're going to say, this is triggering to me. This conversation's too uncomfortable. We can't talk about it.
Yep.
And that's the boundary.
I love that because in doing so, which is what all boundaries do, they, against popular belief that boundaries push people away, right? That's the myth. That's the fear. Actually, boundaries protect your relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So in saying, I feel like it is harmful to our friendship, we can agree to disagree.
Yeah.
I don't like what gets provoked in me. I think I become super judgmental and that makes me feel bad when we're done talking.
Totally.
And I love you. And I don't want to have that interaction with you. So why don't we just agree? Can we agree? And we get the person to say that they'll, can we agree that this will be off the table for us?
That's right. That's right. This is off the table for us. It does adjust the level of depth of a friendship, because when you can't talk about big things that are really important. Look, I think that politics, pandemic issues will change friendships. And that's a limit you have to be willing to deal with.
Yep. And maybe not. Listen, some relationships and family relationships, there's a lot of studies that have been done, social studies, since the lockdown started. So the last year and a couple of months, of a lot of ruptures within family systems, families of origin, extended families, friendships, where these are relationships that are like actually ruptured, where people are no longer talking. And so I've been very clear within my own family, extended family, that absolutely not a chance in hell am I talking about this or politics ever.
Right.
Because I know where people stand. And I mean, my close family of origin, we're of a similar mind. So, I mean, my family with Vic, similar mind, and my family with my sisters and my mom, which is, for me, there's relief in being able to be honest and share our fears when we were in the middle of this together. And, but with other folks, I don't need to do that with them. I'm not going to change their mind. And it's a family thing. So I just go, I see these people once a year. I'm not going to change their mind. I'm not going to change the way they vote. And if I really get dialed into what they think, I think it will change the way I feel about them. So again, I've taken it off the table in any relationship that I think it would be damaging. A lot of people say that that's cowardice and you should have these conversations.
But it's a boundary. It's a boundary.
And it's my choice.
And to your point, if you make the choice to be in a relationship with someone who has such a dramatically conflicting view, then the only way to be healthy in that relationship is to have the boundary that we don't speak about that, because otherwise it's just going to be too triggering for both people.
Yes. And here's the thing, that is what we agree. Correct. There are many other people and cultures and come from different ways of, some people come from cultures where really hammering it out and hashing it out and having a really spirited debate, as long as it can stay respectful, is what they do and they want to do. So I feel like you only know what's right for you.
And I think that's where I'm all in for a spirited debate, but not when it comes to don't let me become judgmental. So I should just create a boundary.
Right, exactly. We should be done with this.
But it's true. Yeah. I know that that's my boundary here, because I know that it's too heated. It's too intimate, too connected to human life. And, I'm just going to be judgmental about it. So here we go, Terri. How do you know when someone's crossed a boundary?
Okay. So how do you feel? Right. We always get dialed back into the body wisdom, into the feeling. If I said to you right now, anyone watching, anyone listening right now, do you know any boundary bullies? Do you know anyone in your life?
Cross boundaries? Oh yeah.
Right. We know this. The question is, so a boundary has been crossed because you feel a sense of resentment. You feel constriction. You feel like you want to start talking shit about Betty, right? You're like, can't believe Betty. Like you need to get something out. That's like a sign that a boundary has been crossed. Here's the problem though. So I've broken it in the book. I teach it. The way that we've broken it down is into people fall into categories. You have your boundary first timers, because even if in your mind, they might be a boundary bully, if you have not expressed your boundary in words, if you have not made a simple request that Betty not do that thing that is bugging you,
right, then
we can't really say she's a boundary bully, because she really might just be dialed into her own thing and not dialed. Yes, exactly. She might not know that you're feeling this way, and she shouldn't have to guess. So boundary first timers are one experience, but then we do have the repeat offenders. So when we get into the repeat offenders, these are folks that you have actually drawn the boundary with words more than one time. You have expressed your displeasure about something, or you've made a simple request and been specific about what you would like them to do. And the person either continues to do the thing you asked them not to do, or they try to, like, let's say, wear down your no, right? Boundary bullies come in lots of different forms where, let's just say you say no to something and the person's like, all right, but I want to tell you why I want you to do it. You're like, okay, but I already said no. They keep saying, and then that same person says, okay, I'm just going to ask you to sleep on it tonight. Now that means you've already said no like 5 times, and they're literally disrespecting your boundary. So when we become boundary bosses, when we get on this learning curve, this evolutionary journey, you have to be ready to draw your boundary more than once. Now, not 400 times, but more than once. And what I find with the women that I'm teaching this and women in my therapy practice, they get up the gumption, the nerve to like do it once. And they're like, whew, glad that's over. I'm like, yeah, no, this is not over, because
You only started.
this is just the beginning. And we have established boundary dances in our relationships, right? So if it's a new relationship, a business relationship where you're like, oh, I'm going to establish good boundaries early. I'm going to be clear and concise in my agreements. I'm going to let people know the hours that I work, when they can expect me to get back to them. What is the purview of this contract we have or whatever. There's a way. And I find that with women, a lot of times, especially if it's with friends, it's difficult because we're so worried about, I don't want them to think that I think they're going to do something sketchy. Mm-hmm. And I'm all like, listen, it's not about sketchiness. It's about transparency.
Yeah.
And managing expectations.
Yeah.
So we set everyone up to succeed.
That's right.
Instead of waiting until it becomes a shit show, because it can, and it will probably half the time. Something will happen where you made an assumption that the other person understood exactly what you were talking about. And you're like, we agreed to that. If it's not in writing, dude, you did not agree to it. If it is not clear and concise, you didn't. Even if it's just in an email, we're like, okay, this will serve as our whatever. Mm-hmm. And so part of it is we've got to grow up around our agreements. We've got to be able to set those limits, whether it's a business relationship or a friendship or whatever it is. And you can't do that unless you know yourself. So the whole beginning of the book and the whole beginning of this process is really you doing a deep dive with me guiding you into the basement of your mind, which is your unconscious, where we have a lot of information. This is where your downloaded boundary blueprint resides.
Right.
What you learned in your family of origin, the culture, the country, all of the things, those things all come together.
The mirror neurons of how your parents boundaried or did not.
Exactly. How did they problem solve? What was their language stuff? What was their communication? And what was their expectation of you? What was their modeled behavior? So if you came from a family system where, let's say, the maternal impactor, we'll call them, was, a pushover, right? And if you don't know your boundary baseline, I actually have an amazing quiz. You just go to boundaryquiz.com and you'll find out, like, are you the peacekeeper, the pushover, the ice queen?
I want to do that. That's so cool.
Oh my God, I'm totally going to guess. I'm not going to guess out loud, but
I want you to guess. What do you think I am?
I think you're the powerhouse.
The powerhouse. Okay. What is the powerhouse?
That means when you're out of balance. When you're in balance, you can be a very charismatic leader. Yeah. You are like lit up by life. You're like, When you're out of balance or stressed, you want to
control the shit out of everything.
Yes. Yeah. You want to control the shit out of everything. And you're running people over, because that's
definitely
that's what I am.
I know you. Are you an 8 Enneagram too?
I don't even know. I know it's like crazy.
I don't know that you're an 8, but we might have some similarities there too. I'm definitely a powerhouse, but I'll go do the quiz because the old me 100,000% prior to March 2020 was a powerhouse. But in the last year, I've gotten so conscious of and joyful and comfortable practicing boundaries that this is just, I want to be like a testimony to this work and to the fact that it really works, that I think I may be moving out of powerhouse.
Right. Well, here's the thing with the powerhouse, it's really about there's so many amazing qualities
You
of
moving into
that.
the good part of powerhouse. Right? They would say
Exactly.
in IFS therapy, like the part is still good, but it's now unburdened.
Yes. Yes. And we can be in that more positive and healthy expression more often when our boundaries are balanced. So we're not running people over, or we're not feeling anxious about something and feeling the need to, for me, it always shows up as micromanaging, as you said, just so much control, which of course, nobody likes to be on the receiving end of that shit. Like literally nobody.
Oh no.
And with the other ones, right, we have, there's a bunch of them. You see that they're such beautiful, like the empaths and the highly sensitive folks usually end up being the pushover, the chameleon, or the peacekeeper. So we're very dialed into what's happening around us. And for many women, like, because we all lean towards some level of codependency, because that's, again, our role, the way that we've been raised, is we're the connectors in life, right? We're the bridgers, we're the assuagers of, we're the soothers. Now, that seems very like role oriented and gender oriented, and yet it is the way we were raised. So being very dialed into other people's feeling states, we have to find the balance where it's both. We can be sensitive, but if our boundaries are flexible and beautiful, I don't mean too flexible, I mean healthily flexible, we can be sensitive to other folks and still take care of ourselves first. So if we do in the beginning of the book, there's a thing called the Boundary Boss Bill of Rights. And this is literally just 10 things that I feel like this establishes when people go, I don't understand. Like, am I allowed to do that? Is that okay? Am I being like mean? Is this my thing? So I think we should quickly go over them. What do you think?
Great.
Do it. Number 1, you have the right to say no or yes to others without feeling guilty.
Love that.
Number 2, you have the right to make mistakes, to course correct, or to change your mind.
Yes.
Love it. Number 3, you have the right to negotiate for your preferences, desires, and needs.
Amen.
Number 4, you have the right to express and honor all of your feelings if you so choose.
Great.
So you're not required, right? You don't need to be confessing if you so choose. That is important. You have the right to voice your opinion, even if others disagree. Doesn't mean you must. It just means you have a right. You have the right to be treated with respect, consideration, and care. You have the right to determine who has the privilege of being in your life. Don't just let any mother effer come in. Like,
girl.
Right? You are the bouncer of the VIP section. You made the guest list.
That's right.
So get that rope up, right? We need that velvet rope up, because it's a privilege to be in your life. And if your third cousin thinks that she should be coming to your bachelorette party in Vegas, but you really don't want her to be there, it's your life. So it's very important, I think, that when we're raised to have the disease to please, that our VIP section is a friggin' disaster most of the time.
Right.
You have the right to we did that. You have the right to communicate your boundaries, limits, and deal breakers. You have the right to prioritize your self-care without feeling selfish.
Girl.
And last but not least, you have the right to talk true, be seen, and live free.
Excuse me, write those out like the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous and send that shit around. Oh my God. It's like it's literally like, oh my God, the 10 commandments. Oh my God, Terri, so good. I love this topic. I could talk to you about this topic for a bajillion years. There's probably a lot more that we're going to have to do with this topic because it's so valuable. If there was one thing that you want your readers to absorb from this book, what would it be?
Well, maybe it's 2 things. You can do this.
Mm-hmm.
And I am super psyched to lead you on this. But no matter where you are, as Marianne Williamson would say, you're not too old. It's not too late. You're right on time and you're better than you know. So don't feel like whatever you didn't do, we're not that wherever you are, that's where we're starting. And you're in the exact right place.
Great. So good. So good, Terri. Oh my God. Boundary boss, people. All right. So everybody has to go do the quiz.
Yep.
Boundaryquiz.com.
Yep.
And most importantly, head over to Amazon or your local bookstore and buy Boundary Boss.
Yeah, actually go to boundarybossbook.com.
Boundarybossbook.com.
Because then you can get all the bonuses right there.
I love that. BBB, boundarybossbook.com. So good. Yeah. I gotta just say, boundaries have saved me in every relationship in my life. And it's uncomfortable. It's awkward. It's new muscles, but it gets easier as you go, and it gets more and more joyful to create boundaries, because it's just, people feel relief in them.
But I see the shift in you, Gabs, where your empowerment, your self-determination, when you really started getting on this boundary path, shifted. So much less anxiety, so much more expansion. Because instead of feeling like we have to do these things we don't want to, or we have to explain something, in learning to talk true, there is such a relief. Like once you start doing it, you can't stop. It's like,
you can't stop.
Right? Like you can't go back, which is how we know that it's true transformation, because you expand to the point that you would never again fit in the little box that we used to live in.
That's right. Yeah. Beautiful, Terri. So good. I love you.
I love you too. This is so fun.
All right. Amazing. That was amazing. You're so fun. This is going to be the biggest book ever. If you like this video and you want to get more Gabby, check out the next one right over here.